Lauren, a hard question for you. I'm sorry, but I think you operate in a global environment with an extensive portfolio and extensive partner base. You truly are a global organization. What's your advice around how you balance that need for simplicity, standardization, predictability with the flexibility to accommodate these new sales motions, different partner types, different regional requirements?
Yeah, so I think your framework has to be global in mind right from the start, right? And that's where we are, is that you have to have one global program, one branding, okay, first of all. So for ourselves, is SAP PartnerEdge program. Then we have partner track, right? So therefore, we know clearly what is our ecosystem. We are separating them at SAP across seller, across service provider, or across ISV. And we know clearly, therefore, what we expect each of them to do and how they're contributing, right, to support our customers. And that can be standardized and that can be globalized. And your standard benefit framework can also be globalized, right? So what you're going to provide to your partners in terms of benefit differentiations, recognition, how your commercial model ideally should be globalized, right, and provide the same level of commission or discount structure or rebate program, that can be standardized. The regional factor that you're going to need to consider very often falls, I would say, to two categories. A, the legal requirements of that region, okay? You will have specificities around what you can or cannot do in certain regions, right? You will have to adhere to that. You will have the compliance, which might comes in from your company in terms of understanding the type of countries where you might be in a high risk situation depending on your business versus low risk. And localization is a second category, right? So you might need to have a strong effort on localization. We are on a global call here. We are having a conversation in English. That's all well, right? Some of your channel ecosystem in other countries might not be so familiar. And I'm thinking on our side, Greater China is an area where, for example, you need to have enablement in local language. You need to have the feet on the ground to engage with them and to respect also the cultural differences, right? And that's going to have to be super strong. So what you can do is really looking at how you enable and how you drive your own scale. And that will be also available through digital journey, for example, your learning journey, your content, your curriculum, your certifications or whatever assessment you want to have within your vendor program. That can be standardized as well, right? So you need to balance out, I would say, what's in your control versus the things which are outside of your control, like I mentioned, legal requirements, compliance requirements you may have, or localization.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And you touched on a ton there. Kevin, Louise, anything to add to that? A very, very comprehensive answer.
Standardize everything, right? Because it just makes your life easier. But
yeah,
notwithstanding, I mean, Laurent, I like the way you said, the global framework. That's exactly what we do as well, right? It really is that focus on give the regional folks the flexibility to drive their business, absolutely, but within a framework that is most manageable. I think everything you called out, a list, like even deal registration practices, partner portals, standardize everything, right? Because it'll just make it, as I said, easier for you to manage, but also as you make changes to one process, you get the input from the teams and you can roll that out pretty quickly, right? So your change management is quite shorter. So even everything from the onboarding process onwards, right? It really does make sense. I like the idea, obviously, the branding, one program, one set of requirements, if you like, and you can tweak those as you go along. That makes a lot of difference to somebody starting up a channel for the first time or scaling it. And again, a real life example, half of our revenue from a channel perspective is in North America, and we started there and then we scaled to Europe and then Asia Pacific using the same, if you like, cookie cutter approach, which was bring the program to these different areas. Just made it easier to roll out, easier to get partners onboarded, and easier to kind of get to a stable level within, besides COVID, a couple of years, right? So for me, standardization and documentation of processes is key, because If obviously people move on from their roles and channel partners come and go, you want to keep that as easy as possible. It feeds into the ease of doing business mantra.
Yeah, and you will have partners that will operate across multiple geos as well, right? And arguably multiple tracks. Lauren, I think you described it as having kind of an umbrella global program and then different tracks for them to participate in. And I think that flexibility, but a global understanding, I think that does help. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that does help you to navigate and create that consistent partner experience and make you, again, as easy to do business with as possible. Louise, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with everything the guys have said, and I'm just sitting and thinking about it now. And I think also from a vendor perspective, having that global kind of program structure is a massive benefit internally when you want to measure the success of your channel, and look at your dashboarding and your reporting, and measure your whole channel business. If you're having to pull kind of different data points, and you've got different rules and requirements, and you've got various different things in different geographies, you've got nothing standardized, so you can't get a holistic global view of what's going on. Whereas if you've at least got some kind of like global framework, and then you've got some consistency, even if some of your your requirements from a program perspective might be regionalized, some of your percentage discounts might be different, your revenue requirements might vary. You roll them all up into at least common buckets so that you can then actually get a true global view of your channel. I think that's really, really important. And it's an internal reason from a vendor perspective, but it is really important.
Well, it is internal, but I think partners also want to understand how they're performing, right? The more consistent you can be, and the more you can share with them on how they're tracking against not only requirements, but also against all the different metrics that you're measuring them on is critically important. I think that leads us nicely into the next section, where we're going to look at, right, how do you scale? And Brenda, I think at this point it'd be great to bring up, if you could, the next poll question before we move back to the panel.
That's perfect. Okay, thanks, Margaret. So this time we're asking, as you think about scaling your partner program, which of the following are your top priorities? So programs and tactics to optimize the partner sales process, motivating partners with rewards and incentives, programs to improve and partner-led renewals and retention, excuse me, executing high-impact partner marketing and demand gen activities, or programs and activities to train and enable partners. Well, we give people a chance to answer that. I know a couple of questions have been coming in, so Louise, I have one for you here. This came in when you were talking a little bit earlier on, and Angeline asked, what do you mean by tracks versus points base?
So by tracks, I mean a program that has a list of requirements, or hard requirements. So you need to have, say, 2 salespeople trained to be this level, 4 salespeople to be trained that level. Your revenue needs to be X to be that level, or Y to be that level, versus a program structure, a point structure, which will give points to performance. So, for example, they might say, instead of you need this number of salespeople and this number of technical people, or that number of revenue to be a level, it might be you need 50 points to achieve a level, and then you can make up those points by doing a number of activities. So completing sales training might be 10 points, doing some revenue might be 10 points for every $500,000 worth of revenue, however it wants to be pitched. So you meet the program points requirements by a number of different activities, and each activity has points associated with it, which then sum up for those levels.